One of my favorite stories in the Bible is about the woman that had been having a bleeding problem for years. And she comes up, touches Jesus' garment, the hem of his garment, and is miraculously healed. But in the last few years, as I've begun studying the Jewish roots of the Gospels and the Jewishness of it, I really begin to realize how much of this story we completely miss if we're not aware of all the Jewish things going on, the things that the people who wrote it and read it at the time would have just naturally understood. That for us today just goes whoosh. And it makes the story really stand out in some of the aspects of it. So let me read it for you. It is from Luke chapter 18. I'm reading from the Tree of Life version. And it reads, starting in verse 40. Now, when Jesus returned, a crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. Then a man named Jairus, a synagogue leader, came and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come to his house, because his only daughter, a girl of about 12, was dying. As Jesus was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. She came, now, note, she's been bleeding 12 years, and it's a 12-year-old daughter. Same amount of time. I don't think that's a coincidence. She came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. Who touched me? Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you. But Jesus said, Someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me. Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Then he said to her, Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. Now the passage continues on about how Jairus' daughter had died about the same time that this woman was healed. And then Jesus says, Don't worry, and goes and raises her up from the dead, which is amazing. But I don't want to get into that. We tend to focus on that a lot. But I want to point out some other things that are going on here with this woman that just randomly comes up. Now, if you've ever been to Israel and you get a chance to visit Capernaum and some of the other ruins that are there, one thing that you'll learn is the streets in a lot of these villages are very narrow. It doesn't take a big crowd to clog them up and compress people in. So the village itself is small. If people have come from anywhere to see Jesus and hear his teachings, it's going to fill up and they're going to have a hard time getting through anywhere. Capernaum also had a very large synagogue. In fact, the ruins of the one that's there now were built upon the foundations of the one that was there before. It's also Peter's home. So this is kind of their home away from home. This is where they stay. And as they're there, the synagogue leader, at a time when the synagogue leaders weren't real keen on Jesus, realizes he's desperate and he sends for help from Jesus. My daughter's sick. Please come heal her. As he's doing that, Jesus responds, Yes, well, let's go. He's pushing his way through the crowd. They're pressing in on him. They're all trying to get in and touch him and see him. And, oh my goodness, I touched Jesus. And so he's got kind of that Taylor Swift entourage going on before Taylor Swift was a thing. And, we all know that he's on another level. But imagine that kind of a crowd. And in the middle of it, all of a sudden, Jesus stops and goes, Who touched me? What's going on? Now, there's a famous painting of this by Ron, and I always get his last name wrong, DiCiani. But it shows this woman crawling through the mud, reaching out for what looks like a robe with a cross dangling from her neck. And this picture has it all wrong. There's no way she's wearing a cross. That's like wearing an electric chair or a gas chamber. The cross was not a good thing. It was a terrible thing at the time. It was a way of torture, punishment, and death. So get that idea out of your mind. Think this. As she's coming up, she's had an issuance of blood for 12 years. That makes her unclean, according to Jewish culture. And anybody she touches is automatically made unclean. What she's supposed to be doing is going through the crowd yelling, unclean, 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 so they all know to get away from her. And she's not doing that. So she's not claiming that she's unclean when she is. She's touching all sorts of other people, making them unclean as it happens, because remember, the crowd is pushing in. And then she goes and she touches a rabbi. So, according to the traditions of the time, knowing you're unclean, not saying you're unclean, and then making a rabbi or a teacher or a priest unclean by touching them is a death sentence. That's where she's at. This is how desperate she is, that she's willing to literally risk her life to go touch him. But she's not just doing this with anyone or in any way. It says that, depending upon your translation, she touched the hem of his garment, the edge of his robe. I'm actually a little disappointed in the Tree of Life being a Jewish translation, because it's not his cloak that she's touching. So let me show you something here. This is called a talit. This is a prayer cloth. It is what Jewish men, and if you're in a Reformed or even some conservative synagogues, some women will wear when they pray. But if you see Jewish men around and they are religious at all, you'll notice hanging out from their shirts usually are these little things, the tassels. And they have a specific way that they're tied and how many knots and everything else. But all Jewish men that are of religious persuasion, Orthodox, conservative, will wear these. So the tassels are called Tzit Tzit, and they represent their faith and devotion to God. It's a way for them to mark themselves to others, as well as for them to remember. So Jesus would have been wearing a robe, and at the end of his robe would have been these, the Tzit Tzit. So when she's reaching out for his garment, what the Bible actually says is she's reaching for the tassels. That's the word that's there, is tassels. This is what she's reaching for, is the Tzit Tzit. Now, just reaching out for a Tzit Tzit in itself, okay, she's reaching for the symbol of his faith. But there's even more to it than that. So if you notice, these are tied on at the corners of the garment. So there you go. So in Hebrew, the word for corners is also translated as wings. And in fact, you see that in Malachi when it says that he will have healing in his wings. There's healing in his wings. So the Messiah, it would be acknowledged that whatever garment he's wearing, the wings or the corners where the tassels or the Tzit Tzit are tied, that there would be healing there. That's one of the marks of the Messiah, is that he heals and people who touch him are healed. So when she is crawling through this crowd, fighting her way through, not telling anybody she's unclean, she's reaching for the wings because there's healing in the wings. So she's actually confessing the verse from Malachi. She's confessing him as Messiah because that's what she's going for. She's acknowledging a messianic passage with promise of healing in the wings, and she's reaching for the tassel or the Tzit Tzit attached to that. It's not just a hem. It's not just a cloak. It's a very specific thing she's reaching for because she knows that's where the healing is found. She's confessing Jesus as Messiah, and she's placing her faith and hope in that. I don't know about you, but to risk your life knowing that you could be killed just for being in there and touching him, but that's what she's doing. She's risking her life because she knows that her Messiah, her healer, her Savior is there. And that's what she's reaching for and doing, is confessing him. It is an incredible mark of faith. And Jesus feels this, senses it, knows that something has happened, and turns around and, who touched me? At this point, she's overwhelmed with fear because she knows that she has broken the law, that she has not confessed she's unclean, and now she's just made everybody around her unclean. She's expecting the rabbi, the Messiah, to turn around and order her to be stoned, to be struck down. She knows this is a real possibility. And so everybody's looking around, everybody's staring, and she finally, it was me. Here's what happened. Here's what I did. Here's why I touched you. I've tried to get in doctors and healers and everybody else, and nobody's been able to do this. And 12 years of suffering unclean and as an outcast of society and not being able to shop normal and eat normal and be with my family and everything else, I was desperate. And here you come with healings in your wings. And I knew I had a chance. And Jesus turns around and says, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. What an amazing, amazing story. A gesture of love and of grace that she doesn't deserve any more than any of us deserve. But that's why he comes, is to bring healing and grace. All of us are this woman. We've all been covered in sin. We're all unclean. We're all desperate for that touch, even if we don't know it. This is where we are at. And we're fighting our way through the crowd, knowing that we deserve death. The wages of sin is death. All of us deserve to die. But if we approach the Messiah and grab the Tzit Tzit and confess that there's healing in his wings and that he is Lord, we can find healing. We can find forgiveness. This woman is a symbol of each and every one of us. And her story is an amazing one. One of faith, one of healing, one that is there for each one of us to be able to claim. Will you reach out for the hem of his garment, for the Tzit Tzit, and claim him as Messiah today? I pray you do. I'd love to hear your comments. Thank you so much. God bless.